Welcome to Reel Filmmaking. My name is Corey Tindall, and today I'm going to be talking about how to get good focus out of your Canon 60D. Now, the Canon 60D is a great camera, but unfortunately it missed the boat when it comes to Canon's dual pixel autofocus. It came out a few years later in Canon 70D, which was the follow-up to the 60D. And so when it comes to doing autofocus and focusing systems in the 60D, especially when we're trying to make movies and do videos and stuff, you have to get a little bit creative. In today's video, I want to give you some tips that I have found in shooting video with the 60D that will hopefully be helpful in making sure that you get really good focus in your videos and in your pictures. Now, the first big tip, and I know I'm laughing, but the first big tip is honestly, do not use the autofocus in the 60D. It's just shut it off. Turn it off. It's just not good. I've just had a bad experience with Canon's autofocus system. Just personally, I feel like the autofocus system just fails me 9 times out of 10. And so I have just had to learn I need to use manual focus. So when you're shooting with your camera, just go flip the switch, put it onto manual focus. And I know it might seem scary, but I think really unlocking the camera's potential comes from understanding the different pieces of it, and focus is one of those big things. Learning how to shoot in manual focus is going to be a game changer in terms of creating professional looking video. So all of my tips after this are going to build off of the idea that you are not shooting in autofocus. The second tip is when you're trying to get good manual focus, you want to use the magnify buttons or the zoom buttons. You can go to them on your camera, and let's say you're trying to video something let's say a guitar or a headstock or something like that, the strings. You want to point your camera towards it and use the magnify buttons to punch in and get true focus. When you hit the magnify button, the first time you'll get a 5-time zoom, and then you hit it again, you get a 10-time zoom. And that way you can achieve the true focus and make sure whatever you are filming is in focus, and then you can zoom out of that when you start recording, and you will know without a shadow of a doubt that that thing will be in focus. I can tell you there's nothing worse than when you are trying to video something and you think you got an awesome shot and it's beautiful and the light's great, and then you bring it back to your computer and you turn it on, you open the file, and it's just slightly out of focus. Oh, there's nothing worse. My next tip when trying to do video with the Canon 60D and making sure I get really good focus is to use an external monitor. Now, there's so many options of external monitors that you can use. You can look some up. I'm using a newer external monitor. I think I bought it for about $100. But it's really great when I'm in a situation where there's lots of people or things are happening really quickly, or I'm outside and it's so bright and I can't really see the small LCD. It's nice to be able to have a bigger monitor where you can get true focus just a lot quicker. A lot of these monitors have built-in focus assist features, whether it be zebras or focus peaking or different things that you can use to make sure that you are getting true focus. I'll hook this onto my 60D at the hot shoe at the top of the camera and hook it up through a micro HDMI cable to the monitor, and then I'm good to go. I've got true focus wherever I'm filming, and it's just been very helpful for me to actually see what I'm filming, not on the small LCD. And I love the small LCD flip out screen, but there's some context where it's just not really helpful for what you're doing. My next tip when you're trying to get good focus on something, let's just say you just can't tell if it's in focus, you keep trying to focus in and out and you just can't tell. This tip is you can what is called raise your aperture. So aperture, is the number that is associated with the little f, or it's called the f-stop. So you might see f1.8, f2, f2.8, f3.5. The higher that number goes, the less shallow depth of field you have. Depth of field, again, is that effect where it's when something is close to the camera and the background is blurred out, you have a shallow depth of field because there's a certain amount of focusing range between the camera and the object you're focusing on, so the rest of the background appears blown out or blurred out. And that is awesome, but when you're trying to make sure things are in focus, sometimes having a shallow depth of field is really hard to make sure you get that pin tack sharp focus. So when you raise your aperture, so when you go from something like 1.8 to 5.6, you increase your depth of field dramatically. And so instead of it being a shallow depth of field, you have a very wide depth of field. And so there's more things that are in focus. So if you're trying to video something and you're just not sure it's in focus, you can raise your aperture. You will lose some of that shallow depth of field, but you will make sure that your image is in focus. A bonus tip for this one, if you're trying to vlog with the 60D, I found out since it doesn't have dual pixel autofocus, if you set your aperture to something higher, like, you know, maybe like 5.6, 7 something, 8 something, you generally have an easier time of keeping yourself in the background in focus. When you're vlogging, you're trying to show people where you are, what you're doing, like you're holding the camera out usually. And so when you have a higher f-stop, things are easier to be in focus. And so if you try to vlog with this camera, or if you're doing something where it's like you have to set up a shot really quick and make sure you are in focus and everything else, make sure that f-stop is pretty high and you'll be pretty good to go. And my last tip for getting good focus is if you're doing focus like video of yourself, it can be really helpful to put a stand-in for where you are going to be. Make sure that your camera is set to manual focus, and then focus in on that thing, remove that object, and then place yourself where that object was and look at the camera. And as long as you don't move and you mark where you're going to be, you will be in focus. I hope you found this video helpful on how to get good focus in your photos and videos using the 60D. Even though we don't have dual pixel autofocus, that's okay. We can still make a lot of beautiful images and videos with this camera. If you found this video helpful or enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this coming weekly about, you know, cinematography, filmmaking, storytelling. And until next time, keep making movies and watching movies, and I'll see you on Reel Filmmaking.